Good morning and thank you for invitation. I'm Karel Cada. I work in a firm GAC, and our firm did the research which was mentioned by Mrs. Polechová in her speech. So I will speak from the point of view of practical researchers who has got some experience with gathering and collecting ethnical data. So we have done research about Roma situation and excluded social excluded Roma localities since 2006, and this is a list of our projects which we have done. The most important for this session is a third project on this list, sociological research aimed at the analysis of forms and causes of the segregation of children, pupils, and young people originated from social culturally disadvantaging background. This project was made on demand of Minister of Education and Youth and Sports, and it's, I think, important to mention that this ministry is now the most active player in the field of research of social exclusion. So the aim of this project was to provide an image of educational trajectories and changes of Roma people from social disadvantaged environment, and we obtained the data concerning the educational paths of 8,462 pupils, both males and females, selected from a representative group of 100 schools established in a social excluded Roma neighborhoods. 1/5 of all children were of Roma origin. So, firstly, I would like to describe our definition of ethnicity. Our inspiration is the work of a Norwegian anthropologist, Thomas Hilland Eriksen, and he speaks about that ethnicity is when cultural differences are made relevant through interactions. It does concern what is a social relevant, not with which cultural differences are actually there. I think it is really important to stress that ethnicity is, our point of view, is not only a cultural construct based on customs, tradition, language, music, etc. But we consider an ethnicity as a social category which emerged from a particular social interaction. From this reason, the ethnicity could be significant in particular situation, and in another situation cannot be significant for the same man or female. So Thomas Hilland Eriksen emphasized that ethnicity is always relative and to some extent situational. It's something really similar that an American anthropologist, Carol Silkman, speaks about a negotiated gypsiness, that the ethnicity is always negotiated in particular circumstances. So, and I would like in my speech to stress some particular moments which are quite difficult in ethnic identification or in working with ethnic identification in research. In our work, we usually use this definition that a Roma is a person who accounts himself or herself as being as a Roma without necessarily endorsing himself or herself to these ethnic groups under any circumstances whatsoever, and he or she considered this being Roma by a significant part of his or her surrounding based on the factual indicators, anthropological, cultural, or social. I would like to stress that the second part of this definition reflects the social fact that the attributed affiliation to a Roma ethnic group may be one of the causes of social handicap. So in some circumstances, we in research can only deal with the second part of this definition, and I try to explain why. So I would like to something as a summary of these two methods of ethnic identification. One is a self-reporting and one is an external classification. Self-reporting, then you ask your respondents if they considered himself or herself as Roma, is quite respectful to respondents. That this way respects her or he or she, her or him right to say yes, I am Roma or not, I am Roma. But this method ignoring a social environment. This self-reporting is a situation in particular interaction that people who say in some conversation situation with a researcher that I am a Roma, that the same people cannot admit in a census, for example, in a face of some official body. And it's difficult to collect because you have to have some relation between researcher and respondents, and in some times you have to develop something as a trust between both sides of the researching situation. The second method is an external classification. This is a respect to a social environment, because this method is based on that somebody identifies somebody as a Roma, for example, teachers or people from officials body, policemen, etc. So they ignoring respondents, but it respect the particular situation on the other side of the interaction with the Roma and somebody else. And it is based on an attributed characteristic, so it is one of the disadvantage methods that could be stereotyping in some way. And if you done a broader research, is really easy to collect. In our education research, we assume that the external identification is largely sufficient in the school environment, because if the teacher considers the child being a Roma, he or she infer this fact from some kind of basis, and at the same time she thinks of the child as being a Roma. So we think that it's not important that person account himself or herself as being a Roma, because the consequences of somebody is consider you of being a Roma is real for you. If the teacher consider you as a Roma, it's not important that about your perception about it. So we think that the second part, the external classification, is very useful when we are doing the research connected with social discrimination, because it respects the opinion and the perception of the side of the interaction, which is usually blamed from the discrimination. But I think that is really important if we work with external classification to understand how these people recognize somebody as a Roma. So it's not sufficient to ask if somebody is or isn't as a Roma, but how the respondents realize it, how they recognize that someone is Roma and someone isn't. One of the key factors of this classification was the fact that at least one parent of such child would be considered as Roma. It is the sentence which teacher usually set us when we ask them about the Roma classification. But this classification is usually based on such attributed characteristic which teacher mentioned. First is a physical appearance. Very important is a name. That is some name which are known as a Roma name: Horvat, Gyňa, Červeňák, etc. A very important character is the family history. The teachers say that they know when the family came to the city, and they know that came from the Slovak with a strong wave of migration, Roma people from Slovak. So for this reason, that is a Rom. Quite similar with this is a place of a resident. That is a Roma is somebody who lives in a place of residence, which so-called a socially excluded locality, something which is known in the city as a ghetto or something. Another attribute characteristic could be language and economic conditions that teachers tend to identify as a Roma children from poor families. But these characteristics, it sometimes could be in a conflict. That, for example, one teacher said us, but we don't even look at them as Roma. They don't even understand Roma language anymore. Or she does not come from a Roma family, but they live as they are Roma. So I would like to stress that this ethnic identification isn't unproblematic, that is really rooted in a situation, in some attributed characteristic, and it isn't something as a quite distinct, quite clear distinction between Roma and non-Roma. For this reason, we recommended in a research to use some additional characteristic as something as like control variables. It should be assuming occurrence of social exclusion within family, socio-economic status of family, does the family live in social excluded localities, need for a special education instrument, and a language where family speaks at home. It's really important to stress that only that a really slight number of Roma families, who are identified as a Roma in Czech Republic, speaks at home Roma language. Usually they speak Roma only grandparents and pupils very often reported that they don't understand Roma. So this is about some additional characteristics, and a very important factor is to persuade the participants of the research to participate on this research, because some school has not a strong willingness to participate on this kind of research. That we think that is really important to something as a governmental patronage, that a ministry or some official body publicly announce that this research is really important for some political development. And this is a part of a justification for research, that you need to explain your participants, the schools, the teacher, why is the research so important, why they should participate on this. And a very important part is financial motivation. We quite distinct the two ways of financial motivation for school. One is a direct motivation, that we usually paid school for participation on this research, and the second part is indirect motivation. That is for schools, for teachers, really important to explain them that the result of this research, that could benefit from the result of research, something as a state support or creating of such program which support schools in education of Roma or social excluded children. This is a part of something as an institutionalization of this kind of research. That is the work with the schools which have got an experience with this kind of research is easier than with schools which never done before. And the last but not least is a personal attitude, that some of teachers, as of some directors of schools, have a so strong attitudes towards the Roma that is impossible, in fact, to work in the research with them. So I thank you for attention.